If you'll please join us in hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
We're going to do the first three verses. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Good morning. My name is Gail Stevenson, and I serve as the treasurer of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And welcome to this place. We strive to be a beloved community of warmth, love, and support across all our differences. This is a welcoming congregation where everyone is welcome just as we each are. If you are visiting with us this morning, we would love to meet you and share more about the life of this congregation. Visitor cards may be found in the pocket on the back of the chair in front of you. Please feel welcome to fill one out and place it in the offering plate during the service so that we can connect with you. There is a lot happening in the new year. Don't miss out. See or connect at the back of your worship bulletin to read about everything you can be involved in. Allow me to share a few announcements this morning. The Path to Membership class. Are you interested in learning more about the UU movement, or are you considering joining the congregation at UUCS? The Path to Membership class is the place to learn more about Unitarian Universalism in our congregation. The next Path to Membership class will be held on Sunday, January 12th, starting at 12:30 in Wild Hall. Lunch will be served and childcare will be available. A sign-up sheet will be on the whiteboard in the foyer beside the sanctuary. There's going to be a called congregational meeting to vote on new endowment policy and procedures on Sunday, February the 9th, following the morning service. The UUCS Board of Trustees has called a congregational meeting on Sunday, February 9th, to vote on a new endowment policy and procedures. This new document has been developed by the Endowment Committee, and our board has carefully and thoroughly studied the revision over the last 2 years. The purpose of this updated policy is to consolidate multiple existing policies which sometimes contradict one another and are generally in need of clarification. The new policy consolidates and streamlines all previous policies and brings our congregational policy into better alignment with the Unitarian Universalist Common Endowment Fund, with whom our endowment is invested. Does that sound boring? It's actually fascinating. Come learn about this powerful tool to provide the long-term ministry and life of our beloved congregation. Thanks to the brilliant endowment team for their outstanding work. Links to the new policy as well as previous policies can be found in the happenings. The hospitality team wants to warm your hearts in the new year with homemade vegetable soup, cornbread, and other goodies after the service today. And we have so much more. We have multiple classes starting this January. On Sundays before the 11 o'clock service, study groups and book clubs starting after the service, a dialogue on inequality in our country, and a service on January 19th before the MLK Day on January 20th. And multiple social projects you can engage on MLK Day itself. Thank you all for making this a warm and welcoming place every day.
Well, good morning and happy 2025. I want to add my greetings to Gales, to all of you here, and to those joining us virtually. My name is Ruth Stanton, and I'm delighted to be serving as your worship associate. Scott Neely, our minister, is out of the pulpit one Sunday a month. Not to worry, he'll be back next week. This is a UU practice to allow ministers some time to recharge their batteries, as ministry to a congregation and a community is more than a full-time calling. Our January service meditation topics are going to touch on the grand sweep of Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist history. We are starting a little bit backwards with the history of our congregation right here, right today. Today we have a special treat. Marion Tisdale, who has been coming to UUCS since 1966, and Bob Mitchell, who has been coming since about 1973 or 74, are going to share with us some UUCS history from their point of view. Both of these men have poured in hours of time, amazing handyman skills, financial treasure, and buckets and mountains and tons of love into our congregation, just so that we could grow and thrive. I am really looking forward to their contribution later in the service. Our chalice lighting reading is a reading from number 346 in the gray hymnal. If you'll turn to that, and then please join me in reading responsively. I will read the regular print, and then please join all together to read the italics. 436. We come to this time and this place to rediscover the wondrous gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all her people one. Please join together in singing hymn number 113, Where is Our Holy Church? It's found in the gray hymnal. And now we have A Time for All Ages by Virginia McLean.
I would love any children or children at heart to join me. Anyone? Hannah, yay, thank you. Anyone else? Children of heart? Yeah, you can sit on the chair. Come on down. This will actually end up being a lesson for everybody anyway, but might as well have a few people down here with me. All right, who knows what the word epiphany means? What does the word epiphany mean? A sudden thought. Aha! A moment of clarity. Ooh, yes. There is also another definition. In the Christian tradition, epiphany was the time when the wise men followed the stars to Jesus. And we have a couple of wise men with us here today to tell us a few things. So these wise men, they followed the stars. They had to interpret the stars and how to go somewhere. They didn't have GPS like we do today with Siri saying, turn left, turn right, you know? So they had to interpret the stars. They had to figure out, what does that mean? Does that mean to go left? Does that mean to go right? And I think that's a pretty cool thing that we can learn from. And I have something here for us today. These are stars, and they have words written on them. One word on every star, and I have 4 baskets full of them. Now, this is a tradition that I brought from another congregation that I was a part of, and I loved it so much, and I have been waiting to do this in another congregation, and I hope you guys will love it as much as I do. So we are going to celebrate the new year by everybody getting a star word. You're going to take your star and see what that word is. And you may be like, what on earth does that mean for me and my year? Well, it is your job throughout the year to interpret what that word would mean. It's your job to figure out, how can I include this word throughout the year in my life? And sometimes the words are literal meanings. Sometimes you got to play around with it a bit, right? So my favorite story is one year I had a friend who did not think she was able to have children. And she was like, you know, I'll just have children in my classroom, because she was a teacher. And her word that she got one year was birth. And it made her laugh so much. And she was like, well, I have no idea what this means. Maybe it means I birth new lesson plans for my students or something. Well, guess what? Do you know what she did on Christmas Eve at the end of the year? She was in labor with a baby. So sometimes it can be literal birth, and sometimes you may have to interpret it a little bit. Hey, it's not me. It's you in the universe choosing the word here. And if you pull a word and you're like, nope, that is not the word for me, you are more than welcome to put it back and try again. So I do give you that permission. So, would y'all like to choose a word? What was your word, Hannah? You can't read it. Let me see. It says discernment. Do you know what the word discernment means? Have you heard the word discern? How do we... Yes, so discernment means you think about something and you think about how you can interpret it. It kind of goes along with the whole Star Word thing. Curious. Perfect. There you go. So it will be your job throughout the year to figure out how you can be curious and discern how things are working out in your life, right? Yeah. All right, Robin. Peace. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Sarah? Appreciation. It could mean you need to appreciate more, or it could mean you have appreciation for something particular, you know? You never know. All right, we are going to pass out our words to everyone. But before we do that, I want us to also understand that it might take the whole community to help us interpret our word, right? Yeah, we may not know what that word means. And this is very similar to our rippling bowl, because our rippling bowl reminds us that when we share our burdens and our sorrows, our lows, that it lessens the sadness of it. And we have a community that is with us. And when we share our joys and our highs and our exciting things in life, we have more people to celebrate that with us, right? So as you all come up for the rippling bowl, and remember that our joys are expanded upon and our sorrows are lessened, you can also grab a star word. I'm going to put them throughout the aisles at the top of the aisle. So grab a star word, and then during our coffee hour, I want to hear what everybody's word is, okay? All right, thank you so much.
announce boldness, so we'll see what that one's about. Our religion doesn't have a creed that we have to believe in order to participate. But we don't come together in a vacuum either. And when I first began to attend this church in the 1990s, we had a simple covenant. It's actually reading 473 in the Gray Hymn Book, and I love saying it together every Sunday. And here it is. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. But a number of years ago, this congregation realized that we wanted to go even further, not to just help one another in a general feel-good kind of way, but also to reach out into the world and to stand up against injustice. So we had a covenant workshop. Meetings are a very you thing to do, and we created our current covenant to express how we aspire to join together to make our world a better place. Our words to this new-ish covenant can be found in the order of worship or under the live stream. Please join me in saying our covenant together. With courage we say, we are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of love beyond belief. Before we built the sanctuary, Sunday church was in the fellowship hall, where we're going to have our wonderful soup and cornbread in just a little bit. We had a special song we sang every week. We all held hands when we sang, and it looked like a ribbon of people through the rows of chairs. The song was Weave Us Together. I'd like for us to learn that song today, or review it if y'all are remembering that. And Max is going to play the tune through one time, so we'll know the tune. And then we'll practice sing it once. And then have everybody join hands or touch elbows or pat your neighbor's shoulder and sing it together 2 times. So take it away, Max. Great warm-up. Okay, get to where you can touch another human being. I'm coming down. Maybe I'll sing or be over Max's shoulder. Well, thank you all for joining this blast from the past. It sounded great, actually. When we're able to be woven together, we can accomplish so much. Let's share our joy at being together by greeting each other. And as you greet each other, please remember to take clues from each other as to the type of greeting to honor each other's personal space. Some people are handshakers or elbow bumpers or huggers, and some people are more reserved, and that's fine. And if you prefer to stay in your seat, that's also fine. After a few minutes, Max will play some music to remind us to return to our seats. So let the greeting begin. The mission of our church is supported by the treasure, time, and talents of the members and friends of this congregation. We offer many ways to share your financial contributions, including passing our offering plate. Even if you've already contributed your treasure in another way, we invite you to add your blessing as the plate is passed. Every month we share a plate in ways to further our ministry in our community, our church, and the greater world. Half of all our loose cash and any designated donations will go to our Share the Plate for that month. Our January Share the Plate is our UUCS MLK Day of Service projects. Now, if I get it right, we're planning on having a January 20 event for supporting the Period Project, writing letters to our legislators, and also to do a litter sweep of our church neighborhood, and also, because we're multi-talented and interested, to consider how we might support or start a community garden. So please come on January 20th and participate as your schedule allows. And thank you for being as generous as you are able today. The offering will now be gratefully received. And now we welcome our esteemed speakers. Bob Mitchell, further to my left, and Marion, slightly to my left. And they are going to be sharing a hefty helping of UUCS history with us. Knowing a little bit better about how we originally tied into the Spartan community is fascinating to me, and hearing about our challenges and progress as we have grown gives us pride because we have accomplished a lot. We've been very fortunate in many ways. So, as they got comfy up here, we're going to let them regale us with information and stories about our history. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. You want me to start? How about that song, Marion? Does that bring back memories?
Oh, yes.
Rick Maston, he was an invited minister here, a Unitarian minister, who wrote these songs that you just heard.
Yeah.
And he came a couple times to sing for us. It was a really fun time.
Very creative guy. Well, you know, it's kind of a strange coincidence. I pulled my yellow star out of the basket. I mean, my daughter did. And my word is freedom. And freedom is central to the start of this church. So keep that in mind as we go through some of our early history. I'm going to start out with a man named John Isom, born in northern Alabama, a very conservative area of a very conservative state. Segregation, absolute low pay. If you made 40 cents an hour, you were a lucky guy. So that's just the way he came up in a very closed society. He got through high school and college and went to Baptist Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And he got out of there as a, what do you call it, accredited Baptist minister. And that was World War II, right then. He became a chaplain in Camp Croft, right over here, you know, out Pine Street. Anyway, he was a very different chaplain. Here's an idea of what he told. I don't know how he got away with this, but he told the soldiers on their orientation speech. Here's what he said. Oh, excuse me, I've got the wrong page here. There we go. No soldier ever heard me pray for victory or make any claim that God was on our side or our cause was altogether just. I did not pretend the war was the holy war. I pointed out that on the average, more than 95% of us would survive the war and have a chance to reshape the post-war world. I encouraged them while they were engaged in the hellish business of fighting the war to be prepared themselves intellectually and ethically to engage in the non-hellish business of creating a decent human world after the war. Well, that kind of attitude, emphasizing social action, got to a church called Saxon Baptist over here. I don't even know what you call it now. It's out close to the expressway. Arcadia? Mm-hmm. What's that? No, Drayton's over here. And anyway, it's still there. It's still there. You can still go look at it, but it's not Saxon Baptist anymore. Anyway, he became minister. They asked him to become minister because of his attitude. Not as much religion and a lot more social action. So he became minister there at Saxon Baptist. And he was labeled a communist in Spartanburg. He was, but he attracted members who were for that sort of thing, more about social action and making things right than the absolute tenets of religion. So he attracted a man named Thomas Ezell Tyndall, who is the founder of this church, period. And he came over to Saxon Baptist and sang in a choir and met John Isom, and then he dropped out. And the reason he dropped out, he'd made a deal with his father-in-law support. He was married with 2 children to support he and his family while he went to Louisville, Kentucky, and studied to become a Baptist minister. So he goes up there in 1949, and in Christmas holidays, he comes back and has a meeting with John Isom and said, well, I've been attending seminary in Louisville. I've been attending a Unitarian church in Louisville. Now, don't ask me why, because I never did find that out. I mean, how do you even know it was there? Anyway, he did that, and he said, I don't think I'm a Baptist. I don't think I can go back to seminary. Well, he wanted to become a Unitarian minister, but he had a wife and 2 kids to support, and he had to get a job. So he dropped that, but he had met those members of an adult Sunday school class at Saxon Baptist, and they began meeting in his living room and talking about things they wanted to talk about. Meanwhile, the American Unitarian Association had put out the word all over the nation, I think, that if you could get 10 members or 10 people to sign a petition that you wanted to charter a Unitarian fellowship, they would say yes and send you a charter. And so these people did that, and our charter was started in January, I think, 1954. So that's where we got started. They moved from the living room over here to what it was, Miss Marion's dance studio. Then the Jewish synagogue, which is still right over here. You can see it from the front yard here. It's still there. And then one of the members got up, cashed in some bonds, got up $12,000, and they moved to our home on Blue Ridge Street in 1965. And that's kind of where we got going. And you want to take it from there?
Okay. I will start about 50 years ago when I was finishing training in Detroit as a radiologist and looking for a job. And one of my old classmates from Detroit had called me from Spartanburg asking if I might be interested in coming down here to look at a job. I mentioned this to my wife, Karen. She shook her head, said, "No way." Down south, you're kidding me.
There we are.
Well, Dr. Josie was a very persuasive gentleman. He brought us down here at his expense, took us on a tour of Spartanburg, showed us all the lovely houses and yards down here, showed us the old South. Karen looked at him and said, "Okay, Dr. Josie, now show us the poverty section of Spartanburg. Show us the poor people." And Julian knew Spartanburg, and he gave Karen a great tour. And I think Karen realized that there was work for her to do down here in Spartanburg. Number one was her League of Women Voters and bringing some sanity into politics down here if she could. Number two was the Unitarian Church, which we attended up in Detroit. And it eventually became number three, the Girl Scouts, which she took a great interest in. When we first entered the Unitarian Fellowship over on Blue Ridge Street, just around the corner from Converse, we were greeted by Tommy Hammond. And Tommy Hammond introduced himself as the choir director for the fellowship. And after listening to the discussion in the church and all, and service was over, Karen looked befuddled, looked around, found Tommy, cornered him, and said, "Tommy, I've looked all around for the choir, and I can't see it. I didn't find it. Where is it?" And he said, "Oh, well, they sing when I drop the needle on the record."
Yeah. If you came early,
You're right.
you could become choir director very quickly.
Yeah.
So you tried to get there on time.
Our other early RE director is right out here in the audience, right here, Marion Jr. At the early fellowship, the oldest kid in the class was the RE director. And there was a cemetery just up the street from our fellowship, down the street from Converse College. And if the weather was nice, Marion would lead the kids out to the cemetery, right, Marion? Who knows what you did out there? But you had us worried. You brought them back in one piece. Also, when we were new members in Spartanburg, one of the first questions people would ask us when we were introduced was, where do you go to church? And we would answer, the Unitarian Fellowship. And they'd sort of look blankly back at us, maybe, oh, where's that? Or infrequently, oh, you poor lost soul.
And then they'd ask, what do you believe? And we just sat there, just didn't know what to say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was, that was a discussion. And then the fellowship amazingly grew. We had a lot of fun in the fellowship. Tommy Hammond was also a leader who'd take us up to hikes in the mountains. We'd go on picnics and hikes up there. But the fellowship was primarily a fellowship. It was there to meet people and have discussions with them, and not much more. We did grow, and at that time, the question of a larger congregation or fellowship came up. And Marion?
Yeah, well, when they started the fellowship, they had a first meeting at the Cleveland Hotel. I think it's still there as something. Anyway, they had 40 people come, including one police officer to see if the communists had come to town. Otherwise, here we are, 1982. This is 1951 or so, 55. And we got 40 members. So we have had a zero growth in about 30, 40 years. And so we had this is kind of crazy. We had a meeting with a district representative called Todd Taylor. And we asked him, he said, what's going on here? We've been here for many years, and we've still got about 40 members. And he looked at us and he said, well, how many off-street parking places do you have? Well, we had 3, but 2 of them were blocked in if you couldn't get out of the driveway. In other words, really, we had 1. What is your fellowship hall hold? Well, maybe 30. And he said, that's your answer. You've got facilities for maybe 30, 40 people. And if you don't move, you ain't never going to grow. And I felt like a fool. I said, my God, why couldn't we see that, Anyway, Don Miles was president, and he started immediately to form some committees and investigate the possibility of moving out. And we started right then. Who found this place?
Well, one of our members at that time was the city manager, Bill Karstarfen. His daughters still come to the church here occasionally. They've moved back here from Florida. And Bill had this lot picked out, and he said this would be perfect for a new fellowship. And when this was brought up to the committees, they said, let's go. And we had some generous donations, didn't we, Marion?
Yes, we
from
did.
Some members.
We did. I remember a meeting down in Joe Williamson's paint shop right next door here. And Nell Hitt was chairman of the committee, and she went out and started calling on people to make a 3-year pledge to help build this church. And she came back to the first meeting, how we were doing, and she said, well, we've got to raise the goal. We're already over the goal. So it went well, and we started actually getting serious about it. Where do we go from here?
Well, we had plans drawn up for the fellowship, which was pretty much the building, excluding the sanctuary, and 2 classrooms at the end, which we found we needed added just a few years later after we moved into the new fellowship. When we did move and build, the budget was still tight, even though we had generous pledges and all. We had to get money together. Part of that money came from selling the old house, much like the Hatcher house back here over on Blue Ridge Street. And just like the Hatcher house, this was an old house, had a coal furnace in the crawl space, semi-basement, just like the Hatcher house did. And
Not that much room.
not much. A whole lot of cinders and dust down in the crawl space. And Marion got it, and I decided that the one thing the Blue Ridge house needed was update on the plumbing.
Bathtub, big hole in the floor,
Yeah.
so we could get a big drain through that.
Yeah, the good thing about the crawl space was it leaked into the crawl space.
Well, we did.
We figured if we were going to sell it, we needed to do more than that.
Well, the house had no
Yeah, so we
bathtub.
crawled under there, and as best we could, we sort of gerrymandered the plumbing to the point where we thought it might pass for a couple of years, and crawled out of the crawl space sort of at dusk that evening, decided that we were just too much of a mess to do much else, so we opened a couple beers from our cooler and sat down at the curb.
And meanwhile, there's a League of Women Voters meeting
I don't know
going
whether
on.
it was that or the symphony or what, but we heard this click, click down the sidewalk, and we both knew and recognized what that sound was.
Yeah, well,
We
you better
knew.
tell them we were laying in the ditch drinking beer out in front of the house.
Right. And just as we turned around to look at this click, click, which we knew were a couple fancy ladies walking down the sidewalk, these 2 fancy ladies took an abrupt 90-degree turn into the street to the far side in order to get around us. And we both think we heard them say, "What is this town coming to?"
Mary, did you greet her when she came that night? That lady that came up and passed us on the road? Yes, I'm talking to you. Was it you, Karen? I heard that she came in and asked somebody, who are those horrible men drinking beer in the ditch? And somebody said, well, one of them is Karen's husband, and the other one is a former president of the fellowship. So, and I don't know what she said. I've always wondered. I thought I'd ask. I don't know what she said. Anyway.
We got the house sold and moved into this place.
That's right.
And again, because of a tight budget, we found we needed to do some work ourselves. And one of the things we needed to do was fill up some holes and ditches and ravines around the lot where the builders been digging and all. And we thought we could do this ourselves, hired a couple dump trucks to dump some loads of dirt over here. And we picked up our shovels and decided that we were not going to make a dent in these piles of dirt. Yeah. And had the bright idea of renting a bobcat. We rented this bobcat, and it was the most scary, fun thing we've ever been to. we took it back to the rental company after we had finally figured out how to dig the dirt. Because when you got a scoop full of dirt in a bobcat and you lifted this scoop up, the bobcat would tip backwards and you'd end up upside down. And it took us a while to figure out that you needed to put the bucket down and take little scoops of dirt at a time. We took the bobcat, or went back to the office to turn the bobcat in and the keys in for them to pick up, and the manager was all smiles. He looked at us, it's like, I told you so, fellas. I think the smile was also just glad to get his bobcat back in one piece, and us back alive so we could pay twice the bill it would have been if we'd hired somebody.
Well, we opened this place. We didn't have enough money to build this place, and we had to go to UUA and borrow, what, $70,000? We thought, okay, 80. We thought that we could build this church easily for $100,000. The lowest bid was $151, and that was really almost a project killer. And Mary had good connections with the UUA, and they lent us the money we needed to build this place. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here. So we built it. Did a lot of the work ourselves on the sheetrock and the wood and everything, but we got it done within budget and opened in, what was it, August 1985. We had the first meeting here in August 85. So,
And we're running out of time. I'd like to tell one last story about one of our members at that time, and that was Harold Hatcher. After we had leveled the dirt out around this new building, we decided to come plant some grass seed a couple weeks later. And coming and looking at the grounds, we saw all these holes dug in the ground with piles of dirt next to the holes. We couldn't figure out what had gone on to our smooth lawn here ready for the grass. Somebody said, well, you need to talk to Harold. And so we went to talk with Harold Hatcher. And Harold Hatcher was the head of the men's garden club here in town. And he had a friend with a backhoe. And Harold was the master gardener of Spartanburg at that time. He was the head of the Spartanburg Men's Garden Club. His house backed up to a gully just off Reedville Road, and Harold spent years and years manicuring that gully and planting that gully to where it has become a showpiece here in Spartanburg now. And if you haven't been to the Hatcher Garden on Reedville Road, you need to go this summer. It's really a great, great place in the middle of our small city. But we talked to Harold, and he said, yeah, our friend dug these holes so I can plant all my exotic plants that I wasn't able to put in my garden over there. Yeah. And now Al Sutton is here planting all these nature plants that you got here going, Alice. And Harold had all these exotics that just, some made it and some didn't.
Yeah, well.
But the Hatcher house behind us is named for Harold. And if you want to find out more about him, go over there, look at his picture. There's a brief biography over there. And he was a Quaker by choice.
Yeah, he was.
And second choice was Unitarian. He'd come.
Absolutely, but we appreciate it. You know, we haven't even mentioned the ministers yet, and we've
Well, we're going to have to go to that some other time.
Oh, I don't know. They got another 10 minutes.
Oh, they got a party going on.
Anybody got to go? Actually, the ministers have been one of the main things that has gone on here. We started off without a minister, and we got our first minister from Asheville. He was a retired guy. Bill Hammond was his name. He volunteered to come down for $35 once a month and give us a sermon, which gave us a little credibility. After that, we went into a deal with Clemson to have a minister. They worked between the two. We got a quarter of his time, 1 week a month, and they got a half of him. And that worked for a year, and he came and stayed in an RV out in the parking lot so he could do a little counseling. He wasn't just here for a few hours, so that was an improvement. Then we actually found a real minister. This time it was quarter time. We could only afford him 1 week a month. His name was Gary Hyndman, and he was a real speaker, and he could talk to you. We started growing. So the next year, he was a half-time minister, and then he was a three-quarter time. I guess that's a waltz. And then he was a full-time minister. And of course, you know, a full-time minister only preaches 3 Sundays a month, so we always leave an opening. Anyway, he grew us, and we started to try to become a welcoming congregation. In other words, make gay and lesbian people feel free to come here. And he began that program. And we had programs dedicated to just that. And we met some interesting people. You want to talk about Chris Bice a minute?
Well, I'm going to ask Ruth what she thinks. We can stop here and talk about the ministers later. We have their pictures up here, pretty much the full-time ministers, who really, really changed the church and contributed to it. The one thing I'd like to say, though, talking about our present situation and our ministers, Ann Gardner and Scott Neely, is that new people that you meet here in town now are not as frequently asking you about what church you do go to. But if you do run into somebody that asks you that question and you tell them the Unitarian Church, they say, oh yes, Scott and Ann, we've met there. We've been at this meeting or that meeting. They've really placed this church in Spartanburg. This is a big, big thing in Spartanburg now. I think the UU Church has really found a home here, and really due to the work of a lot of these great ministers we've had. Ruth?
I want to say thank you to our fine speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Sounds good. Good job. Our guys are such great storytellers. And when we were planning this, we got together and told a lot more stories, and y'all are still missing some of the best ones. And we had some pretty good ones today, so we might have to have part 2, I think. I think there's material for part 2. Please do come up and take a peek at our early ministers, though. And the pictures go through Sally Bunyard, I think. But Sally Beth Shore's picture is being requested, and then we would be up to our current ministers. So the pictures are past ministers. Just to let you know briefly, to point out that the welcome music that was played before this service, Mango Thoughts in a Meatloaf Town, was actually written by Meg Barnhouse. She was one of our past ministers, very beloved, and she wrote that while she lived in Spartanburg, the meatloaf town. And the UU Church helped her soothe her desire for mangoes. That's my interpretation. And you can check out the lyrics, and I think that kind of fits us. So, oh, is that when she wrote it? Okay, thanks, Riley, for remembering that for me. So she wrote it for our 50th anniversary. So thank you, Marion. Thank you, Bob. There you are. For doing such a fabulous job today. I really appreciate it. Please join me, and we're only going to sing verses 1 and 2 of We'll Build a Land. This church has been all about building, and it's number 121 in our gray hymnal. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can't be. Build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands and of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Thank you. To extinguish our chalice, our reading is from the words of John Isom, the Baptist minister whose radically unbaptist thoughts led to the founding of this UU congregation. We must look within ourselves for our own salvation. If the human race can be saved from war and the fear of war, from hate and malice, from poverty and the fear of want, it will be through our obedience to the invisible reality of our nature that demands us to treat others, all others, as we want others to treat us. That is the straight and narrow gate, the only one through which we may enter into the heaven of our hopes and dreams. May we enter that gate in 2025. Blessings be. And now let's sing our closing song.